ready to start? Okay. However you want to take notes is fine. I do want you guys to listen because this is important clarification sections because these are common mistakes that I've seen on the assessment. So like I said, I'm talking about these to achieve criteria here and also this one over here as well. Yes, that's what I wanted to talk about. I'm just trying to think where else I wanted to go with that. Back here. Okay. So I printed off this little piece of paper that has the image of a food web because I really want to talk about how the ocean acidification is going to badly affect marine life. I also have this image on my Google Classroom if you want to just copy and paste the image into a document, but I am going to glue it onto my piece of paper and write some notes. So yeah, just FYI if you guys are wondering what that piece of paper is for. Otherwise, you can just hold on to it. But I will write notes next to it. I'm just very mindful I needed more paper. I was trying to save on the printing. All right. Actually, I'll put it this way a little bit. There. Okay. So just some things to keep in mind. When we are talking about a food chain, we are just talking about one aspect of who is eating who. And when we talk about a food web, we're actually seeing how everything interrelates together. So keep in mind that things can eat multiple things, and some organisms only eat one type of item. Other organisms will eat a variety of stuff. For example, pandas only eat bamboo. Humans and pigs, we are multi kind of eaters, so we can eat a lot of different things. The good news is if you've evolved to eat multiple things, then you're more likely to survive because you can actually get multiple food sources, which is useful because in case one food source runs out, you can then eat something else. So if you can't get your hands on a burger, you can eat some fried chicken instead. So thinking about the food web here, we need to be mindful that the base of our food web and where this energy is coming from our sun. Right? That's always the first step whenever you see a food web or a food chain is the energy from the sun. Remember that energy is not, gentlemen, you know how you guys feel. Like, Xander knows what it's like. So, yeah, this is what I feel like. All right. So, remember that energy is not created or destroyed. It is just transferred or transformed. So it becomes a different state of energy, or it stays the same state of energy. It just goes to another component. Same thing goes for matter. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. It's only changed. So everything that has existed since the Big Bang still exists today. So with our energy from the sun is getting energy because it's going to be doing nuclear fission. It's taking the hydrogen atoms, it's fusing them together to make helium. One, now two. And that's going to release a lot of energy, such as light. That light travels to us on our planet, and luckily we have organisms that have evolved to utilize that light and to fix that light energy and transform it into a chemical energy. So when they're doing that, they're doing photosynthesis, and they're going from sunlight to sugar. All right, I'm hoping you guys kind of have that base idea from biology and things like that. When we are talking about the ocean, we are thinking about our producers. Now, there are, yes, some plants in the ocean, but the main producer that you're going to get are phytoplankton. So these single-celled organisms that are able to convert light energy into food. And so they're the bottom of the food chain. If we were talking about land situations, we would talk about plants. So the herbivores that eat the plants. So they eat the plants, they get their energy from that. Or sorry, not they eat plants. They convert the light energy into sugars and things like that, and that's how they store their energy. Then you have the next layer, which is the primary consumer. So the first consumer, the thing that eats the first thing in the chain. So these guys are eating the phytoplankton, like the shrimp. Then you have the secondary consumer, and the secondary consumer eats the primary guy. So, for example, this lanternfish eats, he doesn't eat the shrimp. It's the shrimp. The tuna eats the shrimp. They have a second. Oh, ocean sunfish. There you go. Then you have the next layer. So a tertiary consumer eats the secondary. And then the quaternary eats the tertiary. So it's all going up on who's eating who, and then you have the top of the food chain. So humans are typically the top of the food chain, unless we're in a very bad situation, and we are not the top of the food chain. So that's sort of something to keep in mind. The other thing I want you guys to keep in mind is that a lot of it is interconnected. So things eat each other and stuff like that. So the first thing to keep in mind when we're talking about the food web and we're talking about ocean acidification is that with the acidification of the ocean, that's going to affect all the marine life here because they don't like certain pHs. The thing to keep in mind in particular that is really bad with ocean acidification is the shellfish level of our food chain or our food web. So the first thing to keep in mind is that shellfish, the shells are going to become more brittle. And the reason why that is happening calcium carbonate. So their shells are made up of calcium carbonate. It's really great. It's insoluble in water. It's really strong and it's hard, so it can protect them from predators. But the problem with ocean acidification, if you guys remember, there is that equation, which is the main buffer section that we're talking about. So this is our main equation that we're thinking about. The bicarbonate and the carbonate are the buffers of the ocean, so they help maintain that pH balance. The problem with ocean acidification is we have so much hydrogen ion available that it needs to be neutralized. So to balance the disruption to the equilibrium, it forces the reaction to go to the left, thus decreasing the amount of carbonate that then is available. All right. Now we know that this is going to be a temporary thing, but part of the problem is that it's continuously happening. We're still adding more and more carbon dioxide, so it's not actually getting to a level of equilibrium. The other issue is that we are basically running out of carbonate. So we've run out of one of the reagents that we need. So that's happening. Now the problem is without this carbonate here, the shells cannot be made. The other thing to keep in mind is that hydrogen and calcium are both competing for the carbonate, and hydrogen has a higher affinity to carbonate than the calcium. So if they're in a fight together and who's going to bind with it, it's going to be the hydrogen over the calcium. So not only does it affect the free ions that are floating around in the water, but it'll also just dissolve the carbonate that's already there. Or sorry, the calcium carbonate that's already there. So this is extremely problematic for multiple reasons. So obviously this means we have less shellfish, so we have one layer of our food chain that's going to get affected, and then everything else falls down with it. So that's the first thing that's going to happen. That's the first major thing. The second major thing that's going to happen is the pH being lower is not good for these marine species. So you have to remember that over billions and millions of years of evolution, these marine creatures have adapted to live in a certain pH in the ocean. So their gills, everything, their whole body is used to a certain pH. Now that we've changed the pH of the ocean, it is now damaging their organs and things like that, and their gills and stuff. There's also homeostasis, which I think you guys are doing in bio as well. So our bodies want to have a certain level of balance of, different kind of factors. And one of those things with homeostasis is balancing pH. And so now these organisms are spending a lot of energy in order to fix the pH in their systems. The other thing to keep in mind is that the shellfish are spending more time and energy trying to find carbonate that's available for them. So again, they have less energy for themselves as well. So that's the other thing to keep in mind is that there's a lot of energy loss to maintain pH and find carbonate. So lots and lots of energy loss in that sense. That has a downstream effect. So the downstream effect is if I have to spend all this energy to help me survive and to help me find carbonate, I then have less energy for myself to do my life processes. So the energy is now not going to be used for reproduction. It's also not going to be used to grow. So if they're not reproducing, our populations fall. So the population decreases. And on top of it, of the remaining population that's still there, those fish, those shellfish, everything is a bit smaller. So they're smaller in size. So that's our next problem. Are we okay with that so far? All right, the other thing to keep in mind, which goes back into our food chain, and the reason why I selected this image here is because they showed all the different levels. Now, something to keep in mind is that every time we go up a chain in the food chain, energy is lost. So as we go up from producer to primary consumer, the producer had a certain amount of energy in it, but the primary consumer doesn't get the full amount of energy that the producer has because energy has been lost in things like heat or heat production, at least with mammals. Same thing. So every time we go up, we have less and less energy. So the energy decreases. And I think actually, I should have probably printed that as another image. Energy level. The food chain. I want to show you guys this. Food chain. Just so you guys can understand. So the rule is there's roughly about 10%. So the previous, so the next level of the food chain only gets to about 10% of what's from the previous chain. So that's all that's transferred. So there you go. That's a good example. So this is the energy that you see in the primary producers, but the producers, but the primary consumers only get 10% of the energy that is there. And then vice versa, going up and up and up. So what this means for this food web in the ocean is that now the shrimp is going to have to eat more phytoplankton in order to get enough energy to survive, because not only because they are smaller. And then it's continuing upward. So it's a real cascading snowball of problems. Are we okay with that so far? So it's a really, really scary thing when we think about it. So that's why I want to point out those things to you guys. So that covers these two and these two. So just be mindful that when you guys are writing about this and thinking about this, you need to think about the sequence of events and how everything kind of interlinks together. I want to also give some final advice about this internal, because I know I haven't covered all the points that are there. Something that came up that I heard you guys talking about was the temperature and how the increasing the temperature is good for the ocean acidification. When I say good, I mean it's a double-edged sword. Okay? So the increase of the temperature of the Earth is good because it actually slows ocean acidification in a sense of carbon dioxide won't dissolve into the ocean as quickly. So that's good. But the downside is we have a positive feedback loop. So now we're getting more and more and more warmer because of that. So the carbon sink isn't happening as well as it used to. And on top of that, with the Earth getting warmer, the ice caps are melting. And with the ice caps melting, it dilutes the ocean. With the dilution of that ocean, the buffers don't work as well. So that's something else to keep in mind. So that's what I'm saying, it's a double-edged sword. So yay, it's good, less carbon dioxide is getting dissolved, but oh no, the buffer doesn't work as well anyway. It's a really complex problem, this one. And the other thing you got to keep in mind is you're probably going to get really depressed doing all the reading of this because it is really quite sad. But it's important for you guys to know because you guys you're 13. Some of you guys are 18 or going to be turning 18. You're going to start being able to vote. And so you can use your vote to influence things like this and picking policies that will do something to tackle this issue. The reason, like I said, I wanted you guys to research New Zealand is so that we have a New Zealand impact, but also the Pacific Islands are going to be far more affected by ocean acidification and by climate change in general. So it's really sad that other players are basically deciding how other people on the earth are going to have to live. Keep in mind, there's one more thing that I haven't had a chance to have you unpack in class, but I want you guys to do that, and that's thinking about solutions. So that is one of the requirements for the chemistry bit of it. Be mindful for the excellence. You need to evaluate those solutions. So you need to say what are the challenges for them, which one's better, that sort of stuff. Other things to keep in mind is that for the excellence, I want to see that you have integrated in the equations for ocean acidification. So you might take certain sections to talk about, but I should see the equation throughout your essays. For the Earth and space science component of this, so basically I'm double dipping. It's one set of research, one essay with a few extra paragraphs. Now we can get 4 more credits. The thing you have to be mindful that you have to do as extra is you need to think about the impacts on society and the impacts on individuals. Society is a general term, so you can write about any society. You can write about New Zealand, you can write the Pacific Islands, the whole world. That's all fine. You also need to state an individual impact. So when I say individual impact, how is someone by themselves affected by ocean acidification? So for example, someone that works in a seafood processing plant or a fisherman. That's what I mean by individual. You also need to describe a personal response to ocean acidification for the Earth and Space Science section, and also explain how people are responding to ocean acidification as well. All right, so just keep that in mind for that component of it. I'm very mindful of time. Last bit of recommendation is, we don't have time for the my choice, but that's fine. So there is the Just the Achieve document. Just wait 2 seconds. I do want everyone to do that one, so that way we can ensure you guys have the 7 credits in the bag. I also highly recommend you guys make a mind map at some point when you are working on this internal. It's really good for the excellence because you need to think about the extended abstract and you need to think about all the interconnectedness, so big picture. I would say definitely make a mind map before you start writing so you can think about how you want to organize your essay. What else do I want to say? So next week, I'm going to pick back up on organic chemistry. If you don't want to do organic chemistry as your external, you're going to be able to then start working on your ocean acidification. If you do want to do organic, you're going to do organic with me, and then after we finish organic, I will start thermo. So if you don't want to do thermo, then you have some time in class to work on the ocean acidification and study for organic, or yeah, that's it. And then the thermal people will obviously start with me. Be mindful if you are planning to sit both exams. I want you to talk to me after class real quick so I just know who's thinking about that. And I want to make sure you are aware that I want you to pass organic first before you do any thermo. Okay? Cool. That's us.